fall down. Mama, I'm fine, don't worry. Go back out to sea. Sail home, sweet home, where the ships must go to get all cleaned up and put away.
Oh my goodness.
Here we are. Another Friday.
I'm going to say it to the viewers who had to sit through that. You have no idea how much dancing goes on in the background when our
So much fun with it.
welcome.
We're all very glad that no one else could see it. That's the truth about it.
Right.
I actually helped pick that song because when Teresa, she like made the countdown, she put the graphic together and all that. She sent me a couple examples of like potential countdowns, and they all had like this like ethereal kind of like somber sounding music or like epic movie score stuff. And I'm like, I don't know if that's really the mood. And then she sent me this one, and the song was a straight up lullaby. It was like, go to sleep, close your eyes. And I'm like, we don't want people to go to sleep and close their eyes, right, for our live stream. So we looked up some upbeat music, and that's where we found that one.
This one's upbeat. I like it. Nice work.
Yeah, honestly, once we start hearing, like, yeah, this is really dope. We like it.
You know what? It doesn't matter if we like it. Does Facebook like it?
That's
to those of you who tune in every single week, hopefully you don't mind sitting through our countdown. But welcome. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. I'm Caleb, and my partner today, Mr. Dakota Hall. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. I see Teresa says she's here. Now, just so you know, and so everybody can wish her well, she's not feeling well today. She was a bit sick, and so she's having to monitor our live stream from home today. So send her best wishes. Get well soon. So
yes, thank you, Dakota. I have come down with a cold myself.
Oh, you too, huh?
We're a house full of sickos over here, so I'm sorry I couldn't make it to the office today.
I'm sorry to hear it.
We have Estella. Hello, gentlemen. Happy Friday. Hello to you, Stella. Happy Friday to you. Thanks for being here. As always, you are here every week, every single week, Estella. It's awesome. All right. So today is Q&A. It's our favorite.
It's a lot of people's favorite, I think.
Yeah. Selfishly, it's because you all who write comments and questions do all the work for us. We just get to sit here and yap for 45 minutes. So,
I mean, it's a little bit hard for us because sometimes we have to figure stuff out on the fly, things that we might not have known the answers to, but it means we don't have to do a whole bunch of research first.
That's true. Estella says, get well, Teresa. Thank you, Estella. Get well, Teresa. All right.
As is customary for streamers and YouTubers, that if you're watching this, go ahead and give it a like, give it a share, subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. Follow us, all that stuff, because we're going to be getting to a lot of special needs related things. So if there's someone that you know who has a special needs child or works in that area and they have questions that maybe we'll have the answers for, so share it to anyone you know.
Yes, thank you, Dakota. And to remind everybody to do that.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
We love playing with toys here. It's great.
We don't have any questions just yet. Oh, Teresa says, hey, Dakota, your last short vid got a lot of comments. Oh, Dakota, tell us about that.
Which one was that?
The regional center one.
Oh, is it the regional center one? Oh, yeah. So that was something we want to talk about because we heard a lot from Vinaya about how these things work. Obviously, she's our expert around here, and so it's something that Teresa mentioned she'd gotten comments on Facebook about people who weren't really getting the most out of their regional center, and it wasn't really doing anything for them. And so that was something that we wanted to touch on about what regional center could provide and why it's still beneficial to have it. And apparently, a lot of people are wondering about the phone app, the GPS app for kids who elope. So now I only heard a little bit about that. That it is a thing that regional center can provide. Caleb, do you know any more about that thing? the phone app?
So as far as, I mean, there's different applications. So I've heard a lot of success with Angel Sense. So Angel Sense is a company that partners with Regional Center, to my understanding, where some people can get it paid for through the Regional Center. It's like a monthly subscription along with the device. So most people, it's either I believe it's more of a watch bracelet. So it's kind of like a smartwatch, if you will, but it's made for kiddos with autism or disabilities who have, eloping tendencies. And so it acts as a GPS in a sense, where yes, you can download an app, to my understanding. So I don't know if that's it specifically, because I think there's a variety of different applications that do the same thing, GPS tracking, but that Angel Sense is like the big one in this community. So, so it's something that you can apply for. I would recommend researching Angel Sense if you haven't already. That's a very, very common one that a lot of people use and talk about. And I have heard, again, just to reiterate, Regional Center has paid for it through self-determination at times. So if they have their own app, if they have their own version of the tracking, that I wouldn't have too much information on. I'm not too sure. So if anybody has experience with Angel Sense or GPS tracking for their elopers, let us know. And if Regional Center has helped you out in any way with that.
We'll have to get probably more information from Myra, since she's the one that's been telling people about this lately, and figure out what exactly the app she's talking about is, and if it can be funded through Regional Center even without self-determination. Maybe
Yeah,
we'll do a follow-up, or we'll make a post about that.
I agree. All right, Denise, whole lot to you. Should we provide the IPP to the IHSS social worker? Dakota.
Sure, I'll take this one. I would say, I mean, you can never 100% say, oh, you should always provide this document or that document. But I would say most of the time, I think the IPP is useful in most cases. Sometimes it'll just straight up say, oh, their strengths are, their safety is great, and they can dress themselves, they can feed themselves and everything. And you might say that's not accurate at all. But more often than not, I'd say the IPP is a good document to give to the IHSS worker.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that it is case by case, right? A lot of people, they will ask very broad questions, I guess you could say, when it comes to evidence. We talked about evidence last week, right? So last week we talked about like what to provide, what not to provide, and ultimately it comes down to what it says about your child, right? However, IHSS most of the time will request the IPP, the IEP, and all that. And you don't have to provide it. You don't have to, technically. There's not like a regulation that says that you're going to get denied if you don't. But from experience, we know that IHSS does not like it when they request something and you do not provide it. Okay. If they're actively trying to gather evidence to determine if this child needs protective supervision or what specifically is going on with the areas that you talked about as a concern, they want to know, is the IPP or the IEP going to highlight that? Because those are the two biggest things in that child's life, school and regional center, most of the time, right? Excuse me. And so, yeah, so Denise, it's not a yes or no. It's more of like, it's inevitable. You're going to probably have to provide it eventually. And if it says some great things in there about the child's needs, and it shows really good evidence for the need of protective supervision or anything of IHSS related, then you would want to share it, right? So I don't know, Dakota, do you have any last thoughts on that one?
No, I mean, pretty much the same as what you said. It's always going to be on a case by case basis, and just as, like, I would say the IPP more often than not will have useful information. It will be good to provide. You know, things like the IEP are like the opposite, where I would say most of the time it's going to hurt more than it's going to help. But there can be rare occasions where the IEP goes into detail about lots of self-injurious behaviors. And while it's rare, if you do have one of those, then it's great. You know, go ahead.
Yeah, totally. All right. That was a good one, by the way. Thank you, Dakota.
Oh, that short, yeah. Well, it was, a lot of it was Teresa's idea, so I'll give her credit for that.
Ooh, we do have a regional center live coming up next month with Vanea. Okay, everybody, if you got regional center questions, hold on to them. Hold on to them. I mean, of course, share them today if you want. I'm saying don't not comment, but we do have Vanea, who has joined us several times before in the past, who will be joining us, and she is a regional center expertise.
Yeah, we can do our best to answer them right now to the best of our knowledge, but she will be able to give you the real best information.
Yeah. Denise says my IPP does state injurious behaviors and elopement.
Mhm.
Well, that is good. It's for protective supervision, right? If you are using that as evidence for PS, definitely. But again, they could say other things too, right? So we of course don't know because we're not reading it. But that is key. That is key information to have in there. If the child engages in those behaviors, it is key to have those in there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Said yes.
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 All right. Well, while we're waiting for more questions, do we have anything else that? Well, let's talk about evidence a little bit, because like we mentioned the IPP, the IEP. There are other documents or other like letters. We like getting letters oftentimes, but it's, we can never say for sure. Oh yeah, always include a letter from your nurse, or never include a letter from grandma, because it's always going to depend on what exactly it says, right? Like, a letter from a doctor will be given a lot of weight, but if it says that, the patient knows what he's doing, he's aware of his actions, but he's a danger to himself, for self-harm reasons. If it says both those things, that's not good at all. That's not going to help us at all. But, so it's not always obvious, right? That we know that dangerous behaviors are part of, it's trying to throw me off. We know that dangerous behaviors are part of the need for protective supervision, but it can be more complicated and more nuanced than just that.
Definitely. That's why it's like, I mean, I love when, you go on other Facebook group pages, or even here on our comments section, people talk a lot about what they did to get protective supervision. And, it's great. And it's so awesome to see how the community in this special needs world gets together, shares advice and experiences. But it's frustrating how inconsistent this program can be, and any of these programs, right? Regional center can be inconsistent. That's something Vinay has talked about before too, where regional center operates under the same umbrella when it comes to regulations and laws and all that stuff and what they can provide, but they leave it up to each regional center to allocate those funds a certain way. So I know that's not exactly the point, but that's just kind of where my mind went.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he has called me. I'm not too sure what to call you other than that. So if my son gets protective supervision, does he have to have more than one provider? Dakota, what do you think?
Well, I mean, ultimately, the easy answer is no, he does not have to have more than one provider. But as part of protective supervision, even though they only pay for a certain number of hours per day, they do require the recipient to receive constant supervision all the time. And that can be difficult for just one person to do. So even if you have just one provider, you can have other people share the responsibility of watching the recipient throughout the day. That's what I would say, is that there's no requirement to have more than one provider. That said, if you are already a provider, let's say for someone else, and you're working 150 hours a month or something, and then your son gets protective supervision, you can't claim all the hours. Once you get up to that maximum of 283, then you'd need to get a second provider to handle the rest. Also, shout out to another YouTube commenter. We don't have a whole lot of YouTube viewers so far, but it's great to see another comment from our YouTube channel.
I just realized that. Sorry, I didn't even notice that at first.
This is why the name's a little different than most of the Facebook names.
We have roughly 4 people on YouTube right now watching. Awesome. If you could share that YouTube stream or the Facebook stream if you're on it, that's also a big help. Thank you everybody so much for your comments so far and sticking around every single week. All right, Estella. I'm looking forward to hearing more about regional center services. Yes. Hopefully, Vinaya can provide some with some good information. I think we've done probably 4 or 5 streams with Vinaya over the last couple of years, and each time I've learned a little something. And so regional center is very unique. And Dakota, your clip that you made in regards to kind of some pros and cons of regional center, right? There was a comment from an individual who talked about how she withdrew her child from regional center. Did you see that comment?
I didn't see that one specifically, but that was sort of what the topic was about. Something
Yeah.
like that.
And it was interesting because obviously I know this individual and she's amazing. And her young one, without giving too many details, is incredible. Love this family, but that was a choice that they made, and they felt that there was some negative sides to regional center, at least for them personally. That they felt that the pros and cons, the cons outweighed the pros in that scenario. And so I do want to share that if you're feeling that way, that's okay. You're not alone. Other states don't have regional center, right? And so there are ways around it. You can live without regional center, but we are here to encourage you and say there's a lot more that you can learn. Your rights, what you can request, and how you can go get it if they deny it. There's a lot of great things that regional center can provide and have to provide if you know what to say and who to talk to.
Do we know which week is going to be the live with Vinaya to do regional center services?
Teresa, let us know which week that is, because I don't even know.
If we know, it might not be set yet, but
it might be, because I think Teresa has. I'm looking kind of going through them real quick. Let's see here. Okay, no, I don't think it's scheduled yet, actually. But Teresa, let me know if I'm wrong.
So sometime coming up, I'll read this one for you if you want. All right. B says, can I use a psychologist report as evidence? Also, is there an app that shows how many hours are left when using 2 providers, or is that something that we have to keep track of? My child has 48 hours a month for each of these sections: personal assistance, coach rec, homemaker, and respite. All right, I'll let you tackle this one.
Sure, I'll try my best. I mean, so with these hours, just so I understand the question, is there an app that shows how many hours are left? So when you become an IHSS provider, you're given the timesheet portal, which shows you the available hours and hours worked, because you have to submit the timesheet every 2 weeks or every month, however you have to set it up. So if you have, can I use a psychologist report as evidence? Yes. Just to simply put that, yes, definitely. If you feel that it describes the child or the individual appropriately. So if you think that there's information in there that can be helpful for the need of protective supervision or just the case in general, then absolutely. Anything could be evidence. But I do like psychology reports in general that can hold a lot of weight. Is there an app that shows how many hours are left when using 2 providers, or is that something that we have to keep track of? My child has 48 hours a month. Personal assistant. Okay. So I don't know if there's an app. I'm not familiar with that, but I do know that you can keep track of that through the timesheet portal. So normally what people do when they partition the hours like that, they will have kind of an unwritten agreement between the parties, right? The providers, and they determine how many hours are going to be split. So if there's 48 hours, if we divide that by 2, that's 24, right? Math major Dakota. So if that is what's agreed upon, then you already know that that's going to be worked right now. In some situations, it's different. Some situations, it's hit or miss. Some weeks that provider is going to have more than other weeks, right? So as far as keeping track of it, let us know in the comment section who uses the timesheet portal. Do you feel like the timesheet portal makes it difficult to track the hours if they're partitioned and split like that? Let us know. Teresa said it is the week that I'm gone. Okay, so
she clarified it's May 16th, actually.
Oh, never mind. Okay, thanks, Teresa. That's a little further out.
Not next month, but the month after that, halfway through. Okay, so it'll be a little ways away, but in the meantime, we'll try and get I think specifically we were talking about the GPS app. We'll try and get that information and probably make a post about it. Maybe not a full video, but just like an update about where to find that.
And Estella said they were referred to psych and they believe that it helped them with protect supervision. It probably did. And so I think that those reports can be really helpful. A judge or a social worker would put a lot of weight into that document because it's not written by grandma. It's not a document or a letter that your neighbor wrote. It's not, even honestly, sometimes, we see a lot of social workers reject the IPP, for example, because they'll say that, oh, well, the regional center coordinator is just going to write in there whatever you want them to write. And so, but a psych report, that's totally different. A psych report, anything from a doctor is going to hold a lot more weight than anything else. You know what? I should have said that last week. That would have summed last week's live so much shorter. If it's from a doctor, it's going to hold more weight.
And that's true. The difficult part is that sometimes an evidence that holds more weight will be less specific to a PS need, right?
Yeah,
and so
definitely.
you sometimes have to go searching a little bit to find the nuggets of good information within a weighty document. So you'll have this whole psych report goes into so many things about emotional behavior and coping and things like that, and you need to find main things we always hit when it comes to protective supervision is obviously unsafe behaviors. If it mentions self-injurious behaviors or eloping or something like that, obviously that's going to be helpful. But beyond that, it's the big three: memory, orientation, and judgment, right? So if you can find something in the psych report that very clearly says that their memory is lacking, especially if it says lacking for their age, to say that they're in the bottom 1%, bottom 5% for their age in comprehension, things like that. It's those kind of things that you want to pull out and say, here is a clear statement that says that this child is impaired in these areas.
Yes, and that makes the most sense for the need. And so it is frustrating when the social workers put more weight in the IEP that doesn't talk about those things simply because it doesn't talk about it, right? Anyways, good point, Dakota. Miss Jackie, hello. For paramedical services, can services be approved and added when doctors prescribe something new, or does one have to wait for an annual reassessment?
I think this is a pretty easy one. I'll take this real quick. Anytime there is a change in need, you can inform the county, and you're supposed to inform the county and let them know what the change is, and they should update it right away. Usually, obviously, depending on the county, especially, it can take a little bit of time for them to act on the change of need information. But generally, once you've informed them of a change, especially if it's a very obvious thing like a new paramedical form, they should take it, review it within 30 days, and issue a new notice of action by the next month. That's a pretty standard time frame. When it's paramedical, usually you can send them a new form. They'll update the hours, no big deal. If it's something a little bit not more complicated, where it's a personal care thing or a protective supervision thing, then that will usually prompt them to do a whole reassessment right then, rather than waiting for the annual. But and that can take longer. But for paramedical, it's very easy. Get the paramedical form. If you need it, it's the SOC 321. Get the new prescription, new medicine, whatever it is, and send it to the county, and they should update it.
And what is a paramedical service? What goes on that form, Dakota?
Good question. So paramedical services cover anything that punctures the body, so any injections, anything that's invasive to the body where you have to stick your hand in an orifice of any kind, anything requiring sterile procedures, anything requiring judgment based on training given by a medical professional.
Well, hold on, Dakota. I'm a social worker. I provide physical therapy every day for my child. We do stretching exercises. We do step-ups on the stairs. My therapist has told me that we have to do that for my child every day, 10 minutes in the morning, every day, 10 minutes at night. And the social worker told me that that's not a paramedical need.
Well, it either is, or it would be counted as range of motion / rubbing skin repositioning, right? It would have to be one or the other. That's the way I look at it. And I think what you described, this physical therapy exercises, I'm pretty sure I would count that as a paramedical service.
I would too. And
mostly because of the last category, because there's the, sterile procedures, not really. Injections, no. Invasive to the body, no. But the last category of paramedical services is services that require judgment based on training given by a medical professional. So if you had to be taught how to do the massages or the exercises or the range of motion activities, if the physical therapist had to show you how to do that, then I would count that as paramedical. But there is debate. There's debate to be had there. I'll say that.
Yes. Alyssa, post eye surgery care for a 2 or a 3-year-old.
As paramedical?
I would assume so.
Okay. I don't know exactly what that care entails. I would assume so. If that's like eye droplets, I don't know. I think that would count, but I'm not 100% sure if it does. It also might depend on how long it lasts, because if it's not going to last for more than a month or two, they may not apply it, because by the time they add it to your hours, it might already be done. So
that's a good point. That's a good point too. I think there's also a time limit that makes it extreme. I mean, there's also other things like respiration assistance. So with inhalers and nebulizers, if there's a certain level to a point where if the need grows to a certain point, it then becomes a paramedical need. Even though it's the same task, there's nothing different about it. It's just an inhaler or a nebulizer. But as soon as you are the one administering that, and it's for a certain duration, they roll it over into a paramedical need and require a doctor to sign off on the paramedical form. So going back to this question, just in general, Miss Alyssa. So post eye surgery. So yeah, like Dakota said, if it's something the doctor is sort of like training you on, then to my understanding, it would be yes. If there's like gauze involved or like tape or whatever, or if it's just more like eye drops, and I don't really know exactly what it's going to be. You don't have to share if you don't want to, but I think it depends on the certain level of need there. But it could be considered paramedical, could be under medications. I don't know.
And this is the thing, is that for a young person, for a minor, general medications taken in a normal way are considered parental responsibility through IHSS. They make exceptions for medications that have to be given in more complex or especially paramedical type ways, right? So if it requires sterilization and, checking for infections, or if it's something that, the kinds of things that most diabetes things, because you have to prick the skin, or you have to monitor it or whatever. A lot of those things count as paramedical and will still be granted even if the child's very young.
Yep, true. All right, let's jump into a topic, Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
Protective supervision, hearings. Right now, we are seeing a lot of judges and a lot of social workers put a lot of focus on areas of memory, orientation, and judgment versus the behavioral challenges, right? So if somebody is kind of if somebody is in pursuit of their assessment coming up, or they have a hearing coming up, and they're looking at presenting the case for protective supervision, show why their child or their loved one needs it right now. What's some encouragement there when it comes to like they took the SOC 821 to the doctor, and it says moderate, severe. Their memory is moderately impaired, their orientation is moderately impaired, but their judgment is severely impaired. How is that going to play a role with qualifying for the criteria of protective supervision?
Well, to put it in strict terms, that if that is true, if their impairments would be accurately described as moderate to memory, moderate to orientation, severe in judgment, then that would qualify them as to be non-self-directed. And so as long as their behaviors that they have that are unsafe and unpredictable, then they would qualify. Now, the hard part, and this, is that just because the doctor says it doesn't necessarily mean the judge is going to agree. They don't just go by what the doctor says. They do their own sort of assessment and make their own decisions in regards to that. But you do not have to prove that all three of those categories are severe to get protective supervision. It's basically written into regulations that if you're severe in at least one of the three categories, either memory, orientation, or judgment, then you most likely would be considered non-self-directed and most likely are unaware of danger. Now, there can be exceptions, but it's not a terrible place to start from. Yeah.
All right, Estella, how often does that form need to be filled out once you get approved for PS? Well, we talked about this last week, I think, and it is a very common question. So traditionally, every other couple of years, so every other year or so, but there's no I don't think there's a regulation for it necessarily, Dakota. You can let me know if I'm wrong. But we see a lot of social workers, if it's like a reoccurring social worker, they approved it the year before, they're probably not going to need those forms the next year, right? But if you have a new social worker coming in every year, you can probably expect them to want an updated protective supervision form. But I'd say for most people, once they get protective supervision approved, especially if they have an advocate that's representing them like long term, like what we do with our families that we work with, they don't usually ask for new forms every single year, but they could. And so we did talk about that a little bit last week. So Dakota, one of the comments last week was about whether or not you should provide the information year after year after year if they're asking for it, right? Somebody was saying, I just got protect supervision approved, but next year, do I have to do it all over again? Do I have to go above and beyond and grab documentation? And the consensus was kind of like, well, if your social worker asks for it, you might have to go get some more stuff again, right? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that is kind of how I thought. I mean, to first address Estella's initial question, I think in our experience, it kind of comes down to social worker preferences. As you said, and I agree, I don't think there's a regulation saying they have to get it every year, nor one saying that they have to wait, right? It's really up to them of whether or not they think they need a new one. And as she points out, if nothing's changed, what then, right? Because you can tell them that nothing's changed. They say, well, I want to see the form to confirm that nothing's changed. Well, if you don't give them the form, what can they say? Can they say, well, because you didn't give us the form, we're going to assume that something has changed? Well, that doesn't really make sense. But at the same time, if you put forth like you're hiding something, they might just decide to deny you, and the judge might go with that and say, yeah, I mean, they had a good enough reason to say you weren't cooperating, and so they had reason to believe that you no longer needed the service. So, yeah, I think I would stick with what I don't know if it was last Q&A that we had talked about this, but to say that kind of, yeah, if the social worker asks for documents, and it's especially that one, especially the 821. If it's the IEP and you never provided an IEP before, but they're asking for it year after year, whatever, if it's that bad, it's better not to give it. But the 821 is a pretty standard form that everyone has to get the first time at least. And so if they ask for it again, it's probably a good idea to get it. The most important thing, if you can get it and it is as severe or more than last year, then you should be fine. You should be all good to go. And so that'd be good to say. I as far as like getting a whole slew of documents every single year, even when they didn't ask, I wouldn't worry about it.
I agree. Well said. Veronica, my daughter has specific learning disability. She receives SSI for her intellectual disorder. Why is Regional Center denying her? Well, Regional Center is going to be a little picky on who they accept under the Lanterman Act. So long-term Regional Center, you have to meet the criteria. And there's sort of like there's two different steps. So the first step is kind of like the doorway to the lobby, where you have to don't give me that look, Dakota. This is a really good analogy, okay? It's like a door. It's like you open up the lobby to a business or a restaurant, right? Well, I guess restaurants don't have lobbies. You open up the door, you're in the lobby. You have to let them know whether or not your child has a disability or a diagnosis that meets their requirements. So you have to either have autism, intellectual disability, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, and then the last category is other, which is just like a global developmental delay or something unspecific in that way. And then if you have one of those, then they allow you to go into the store or the restaurant. Does that make sense, Dakota? Is that a good analogy?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. So once you finally get in there, now you are sitting down and they have to assess, is this child or this person limited in 3 of the following 7 areas? And I'm going to try and quote them from memory because we have a couple of comments. So I'll try and do this quick. Self-care, so getting dressed, bathing, all the typical self-care stuff. Speech and language, but specifically expressive and receptive language communication. Mobility is another one. So if they're physically limited. Next one is Dakota. I always forget. I always have to look at them. It'll come to me. Self-direction.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think self-direction with regional center is slightly different than self-direction with IHSS. But basically, it's about their judgment. Do they have good judgment? Do they lack the ability to make the decisions for themselves appropriately? To my understanding, that's how regional center accepts self-direction. I think I'd have to look back at that again. And then the next one is going to be IQ. So if they have an intellectual disability, we can assume that their IQ is going to be lower. But the IEP, the psychological evaluation report, will tell you what their IQ is. So if they have an IQ below 72, I think 73, then that counts. And then the last 2 are economic self-sufficiency and capacity for independent living. So those are the 7
for adults, I believe.
I'm sorry?
Those last 2 are only for adults, I believe.
Correct. Yes. So they typically don't even assess for those last 2 unless you're an adult, right? But out of those 7 that I just said, I was so messy with it, you probably don't even remember them. But if out of those 7, 3 of those your child struggles with, and then before that, if they have one of those mental impairments or diagnoses that regional center accepts, then you have a chance for regional center services. But if there's something missing there, you mentioned they have an intellectual disorder. So if you mean intellectual disability, then that should be the door to the lobby, right? So, but you're welcome to share more if you want. Oh, she wrote another comment. Veronica, you said she's 10 years old, but she functions as a first grader.
So
okay.
She mentioned that there was a specific learning disability in the first comment. And so what I'm thinking is there's a good chance, I think, that you at least, you meet the first step of having one of the diagnoses or something similar enough to be evaluated. I'm guessing the hard part is getting 3 of the 5. I mean, 7, but for a 10-year-old, only 5 categories of showing. I think, is it significant impairment they have to show in 3 categories? Vinaya would know the wording better than I do, but and again, I think to recap, it was communication, self-care, self-direction, mobility.
Yeah, learning is like low IQ, so learning disability technically.
So definitely hit that one. Maybe communication as well. Maybe self-care. Like you might have a case for why you should get regional center, but we'd have to know more, and Vinay would be able to give more accurate information.
For sure. Thank you for the comment, Veronica. Appreciate it. Hopefully we answered your question. All right. I apologize in advance. You've already answered this question, but how does adult advocacy help me as a parent during our home assessment for protection supervision? For example, will you guys be present during with us during the home assessment?
That is what we do. I mean, we work remotely for a lot of people because we're up here in Santa Rosa, but we work with people all over the state, so we can't always be physically present at home assessments. But we do a lot of things. We send documents, we make phone calls on your behalf, we prepare you for meetings, we help you gather evidence, and then yes, we are present over the phone at home assessments to take notes and intervene as necessary.
Yep.
Thank you for the question. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
I'll read this one. Can a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner fill out the form SOC 821 because they're saying she is just a nurse? Ooh.
Well,
now, in my opinion, this is somewhat my opinion, I do believe they would be able to fill out that form. That's how I see it. I believe the exact wording for who is allowed to fill out the SOC 821 is that they have to be a licensed healthcare professional and their scope of practice has to include the areas of memory, orientation, and judgment. So psychiatric easily hits the second one, like the scope of practice part. And they are a nurse practitioner, which, some might say is not a strong enough title to count as a healthcare professional, but I would disagree. I would say they would be capable, but we try to accommodate counties where we can. Like if you can get to a psychiatric doctor who works above them and have them sign their name to it, then great, you can avoid the problem. But I think technically that the nurse practitioner should be allowed. I have heard other counties use their own definition of who's allowed, and they say that the healthcare professional has to have the ability to make a diagnosis in order to be qualified to fill out the form. But I've never found an official statement saying that has to be the case.
Interesting. Okay. Alyssa, fetal alcohol syndrome doesn't qualify. Question?
I think that's regarding regional center in the 5 categories.
So that might be the other. So fetal alcohol syndrome it's kind of an interesting one because it is a physical condition. However, the individuals with fetal alcohol syndrome typically, a lot of times, can be intellectually disabled. They can have a lot of other, what's the term, below the surface diagnoses, right? OCD, bipolar, ADHD, and even other things that are sort of manifestations of the fetal alcohol syndrome. Mm-hmm. So the fetal alcohol syndrome in and itself is not like a qualifying criteria for regional center. But if there is a mental impairment involved from that, or some type of mental illness or something that comes of it, then it could be possible. Teresa said self-care, receptive and expressive language, learning, mobility, self-direction, capacity for independent living, economic self-sufficiency. We nailed it, Dakota.
Those are the 7. Those are the 7 areas that in order to qualify for a regional center, you have to have an impairment, or I think a significant impairment, in at least 3 of them.
Yes.
As long as we're talking about that, if you want to bring up the list again, just a little tidbit that some people who are looking at regional center might want to know about. Vinaya had told us about this a little while back. If your child is, if you apply for regional center for your child and they are in between the ages of 3 and 5, and the regional center assesses them and they only have significant impairments in 2 of the categories, they can put you on provisional regional center where you'll receive the services for a time, basically just in case they develop an impairment in a 3rd category. And then at 5 years old, they'll do another assessment. And if your child now is impaired in 3 categories, then they'll put you on regional center for life. And if they still don't meet 3 categories, then they'll remove you from regional center.
Yep.
So just something to throw out there. If you're someone who's this doesn't apply to the person who asked the question earlier, but if you're someone who does have a child in that area, you could get put on provisional regional center and not get the full, you'll get the full services, but you could lose them after a year or 2 if you're not, once they do that second assessment. It's just something I want to throw out there for people who aren't aware that they could end up getting put on that program.
Yeah. Thank you, Dakota. And before you all leave, please give the video a like, a love, and a share if you can. We really appreciate those who've already done that. You guys are awesome. Thank you. You're still awesome even if you don't, I guess. But it always really helps pushing out these streams to as many people as you can. Sharing to support groups is also a really great option as well if you follow any. So please do that if you can before you leave. And then Tamara said, is that the Lanterman Act? Yes. So Lanterman Act is when you are locked in with regional center. That is not preliminary. So, or I'm sorry, not preliminary. What did you call it, Dakota?
Provisional.
Provisional. Thank you. Sorry.
So
provisional.
To clear up what I'm saying, the provisional regional center provides the same services as Lanterman Act regional center, but it's not quite the same because it doesn't last. It's like you
It's
don't
like temporary.
qualify for Lanterman Act, but they're going to give you the Lanterman Act services for at least until you turn 5.
That's right. Yep. Estella said, we're in provisional with my toddler. Actually, thanks for sharing that, Dakota.
Hmm.
Good job, Dakota. Thank you.
Well, okay. I'm not going to say, I'll say, I hope either that you're able to get into regional center full time once it comes to that, or that your toddler ends up not needing regional center at all because they are perfect.
That's right. Well said.
I don't want to wish more impairments on your child, but sorry.
Well said. I like it. Dakota, before we head out of here, I got to run just a minute, but we have some events coming up, right? You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes. It's not this Saturday, but next Saturday that we're coming down to San Diego, and we're going to be doing our presentation. Myra's going to be presenting. I think I have to present on WPCS, so wish me luck for that.
Woo.
It's not easy to find information about that, I'll just say. But Nicole's going to be there as well, and our new advocate Myra, I believe, is going to be there. And I don't recall if anyone else is going. But
not to be confused with Myra Galt, everybody.
Yes, there's going to be 2 Myras. They're spelled a little differently, but they're pronounced the same. So good luck. But yeah, so I think the 4 of us are going to be coming down to San Diego for that seminar. It's totally free. So if you're in that area, come on out. Do sign up on our website. I'm sure Teresa could post the link, or it should be all over the place at this point. And I believe the week after that, there's an event in the Monterey area. Is that right?
I believe so. Yes. It'll be
right.
No, I think Myra is going to be actually stepping in for me.
Oh,
yeah.
All right. So that's going to be with Special Kids Connect, I think.
Yeah. So that one's a Special Kids Connect in King City, I think.
Okay. We worked with them a lot of times in the past. We love their organization. We love their events. So it's going to be a booth event like we sometimes do here locally, where we'll have our pamphlets, we'll have our information to share with people. I don't know exactly what this event's going to be like, if there's going to be presenters. We're not presenting as far as I'm aware, but they do sometimes have presenters or classes or things like that. So,
which we have done. We have presented.
Yeah. We've done classes with them before. So that's King City.
I believe King City, yeah.
Monterey, that sort of middle California area. So if you're in that area, that's 2 Saturdays from now, right?
That's right. The 12th, I think. So yes.
Yeah.
I recall.
And I think that's all we've got in the mid. Nicole and Janet are going to be there, and it's going to be a booth event for kids. We'll probably have a little game or a craft or something like that at the table. I think if it's one of those type of events, so it'll be a good time.
Should be fun. All right, well, we got to run. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in today. Like you do every single Friday, spending 45 minutes to an hour with us. If you speak Spanish, stick around. 1 o'clock, Nicole will be going live in Spanish, doing a Q&A as well. So if you speak Spanish, you will enjoy that. You will love Nicole if you don't already. But thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in every single week. Great questions. Hopefully we got to everybody's questions. I think we did, Dakota. So thank you to my partner over here. Actually, over here. Right. There you go. Thank you to my partner. Yeah. Dakota, any last send-off words?
No, just I'll great to be here again with you. Good to see everybody. Thank you all for your questions. And I think I will be doing a live in a couple of weeks from now, a few weeks, and then we'll have another Q&A at the end of the month. Sounds great. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Happy Friday. Stay safe. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.